asking.
Great question.
Thank you.
The first.
Oh, no, John.
Wait, where is he? Go ahead, Adam.
Okay, get it going.
Get it.
Councilor Alice is first. Where did she go? All righty. Councilor Allen.
Thank you. Okay, the first item I have is the local law. Was there anybody that was here that wanted to discuss it?
I have a couple questions about it. I
Yeah.
don't know if there's anyone that can actually answer.
I could.
Was it?
We have a committee meeting on Friday as well.
Okay.
You want to wait till Friday
Yeah,
for
I'll
your
wait till,
questions?
if we're gonna have, are there gonna be people that speak out? Yeah, because I have just, about who's collecting the liens and all that kind of stuff.
So are we gonna hold it or call it ready with a question mark?
We can hold it and call it ready with a question mark. That's
Which
fine.
one?
I think it's
Hold
ready,
it.
ready with the question. Well,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
You want-
You said-
All righty, I have item 9, and I should have some commissioners by Monday. So I'm gonna call that one ready. Okay, excuse me, hello. Thank you. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam President. I have items 10 and 11. Any questions on 10? This is an amendment to the COPS program. 11 is an agreement with Sean Morrison, plan reviews for support on behalf of the fire department for permitting. Any
Yeah, just a quick question. Is this to, I know that we've sort of gotten short with the
Past.
inspector.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
reason.
This is to sort of fill a position that needed to be filled so that we can make sure, because I know that's one of the complaints that I've heard is that, with the permitting process, that it usually takes a little while because you got to pull somebody off of
Yes,
doing their job to go inspect it or review the,
yes, he's going to help support our mission to make the permit process, and we're enhancing it and going to be expediting the permits a little bit better. So we're reorganizing our process that has been in place pretty much for 60 years, and we're having a little bit of a trouble hiring full-time plan reviewers, but he's kind of like a stopgap, and this might be the way we're going to go for the future. But he's really highly qualified, and he's ready to work, and he can hit the ground running.
has he done this work here before? Or just-
He's a consultant at many different places, yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chief. Those all set.
All righty, Councilor Rudd.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 12 is the local law in regard to the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication. I know there was a desire to hear from the Commissioner of Finance, Dave Del Vecchio. He's unable to be here today, but he just said in an email to me that he has no objections to the transfer to the law department. He was not involved in the decision to include the Bureau in the Department of Finance. And he believes the previous administration included the BAA in the Finance Department because that was how it was done in Rochester. Then he just said he doesn't have any involvement with the judicial matters. To the extent we have more questions for him, I think we can send them to him. I don't have any other questions on the item. Does anybody else?
I've expressed my concerns and questions there, once again, today at leadership relative to the independence of the municipal, the adjudication board there being moved to the law department, and the fact that as counselors, we voted for it to be in that position, and we haven't seen a year's worth of data that would show that, in fact, that there's a necessity to make a move. I understand, has been, and we were told today, that organizationally it's being moved because it aligns with the law department, and I would agree that it organizationally may look on an org chart that it is more properly aligned under the law department, but For the independent portion of it, I know we had the discussion last night, and probably will continue to have it relative to that. So those are my concerns.
I guess, Frank, I'm not sure if you want to answer, but in terms of independence, there may be differences of opinion on the council, but I see the independence being equally independent or equally not independent, regardless of whether it's under the Commissioner of Finance or the Corporation Council, because they're both reporting to the mayor in the end, and the mayor is choosing the hire. So, do you want to speak to the independence and whether, to the extent that changes, and then it seems like Councilor Bay wants.
Frank Kaleva, Chief Administrative Officer. I think you're right, Councilor. The independence is a requirement of the entity of BAA. So where it's organizationally aligned is, I don't want to say immaterial, but from a standpoint of independence, it is to some extent immaterial. It has to operate on its own. The alignment really is, Councilor Thompson, to some extent just a paper alignment because the BAA is already reaching out to law for its operational support and services. It is more aligned with, from an operational standpoint, the kinds of things that happen in law, but it will remain completely independent. The only city employee is the chief overseeing it, and she will certainly have plenty to do with BAA and will not be taking on any law duties. It just does not fit inside finance. Finance really isn't appropriately set up to support it and its backroom operations. So whether we officially realign it or not, it's certainly more appropriate to do that so that it's clear. But the unofficial alignment has really already taken place.
Yeah, I just wanted to state what I stated earlier in leadership for those who aren't aware. It was essentially assigned to finance because finance was already holding hearings for code violations. And so that's why the adjudication board went there. I get both sides of the argument. I get the logic of it going into law because they do a lot of the backroom work. I also get the concerns for the appearance of maybe a loss of independence. And in this case, it seems, I stated earlier, more related to what goes on the agenda as opposed to the independence of each person on the board. I don't think that's affected at all. But I'm inclined to agree with Councilor Rudd. And it doesn't appear to be any less independent on one side than it was on the other.
Yeah, I think what I would respectfully ask the council to hold us to is the throughput of cases. And if those in any way seem to be impaired, if we were to find out that throughput was impaired because somehow additional duties were sneaking in, we would certainly, ask the council to hold us accountable for that. I just don't foresee that happening, no matter where BAA is located.
Any other questions on the BAA? All right, I'll call that ready. We're tabling it for introduce and table it. Okay, 13. Commissioner Clifford, do you want to introduce this? And could you, in your introduction of it, just describe the nature of a tax rent shelter agreement?
Sure. Good afternoon, councilors. This is a shelter rent exemption. These exemptions are for affordable housing. What they generally do is, instead of being taxed based upon the assessed value of the property, there's a formula that New York State came up with, which is the difference between 10% of the gross rents minus utilities. So payments generally, in most cases, work out to be about a third of what they would be if they were assessed and taxed based on the assessed value. This is a project that the city is really supporting. The administration is supporting. It's taking in totally unused building that's been vacant for many years and putting it back into productive use for a purpose that's needed, particularly in that neighborhood. I don't believe there are any nearby senior housing facilities at all. I think Loretto might be the closest. So I feel that this fills a need in the community, and we've done these type of agreements in the past. This is for affordable senior housing. So this is the vehicle that the city uses for these type of projects.
Just to clarify, so 1/3 of the
it's approximately. It could be more or less than that. Yeah,
1/3 of what typically gets paid. That's after the improvements, right? So
correct.
Regardless, this property would be paying more in the future
than what it is
right now.
Yeah, right now it's exempt because it's owned by the city.
So
we are going to be
returning
selling it to this entity, and they're going to be entering into this agreement with the city.
Commissioner, I see it says section 402. Is section 402 the same as section 42?
No, I mean, I believe that has to do with the nonprofit law, that section. They create certain nonprofits. In this case, it's a Housing Development Fund Corporation. And it's the type of corporation that has to own the property for it to get this type of a shelter rent exemption. It's the only exemption that I have to come to you counselors to grant. The state wants to make sure that the elected representatives are on board with these projects.
Is it the same company we talked to? Same company. You're the same company. Okay.
Yeah, if we have any questions, we have one of the representatives of the home leasing here that could perhaps answer them.
Because we talked maybe 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, 3, 4 years
Probably
ago.
3, but yeah, long time ago.
Okay, so it's going to be strictly senior, correct?
It is senior. It is an age restricted.
Disabilities and adding in for other folks, but it's just strictly senior.
It is senior, yeah. 27 of the 54 units will be for frail elders, and the rest will just be for low-income elders.
Oh, 55 and over, right?
Yes.
I'm just asking, I can go in.
I'm almost there.
Will there be, if they're frail, are there people checking in? Are there services involved with this?
Yeah. So Nescentia Health, which used to be Visiting Nurse Service, reached out to the state and applied for an Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative grant, which they were awarded, and that grant comes with it money for supportive services and a rental subsidy for 27. And so they have that in hand, and that'll get applied on their side of the to the operating budget. It doesn't come into our budget, but it buys services. I'm sorry?
It is a good project, but I got to go back because I know when we talked a couple years ago, is there going to be someone on site?
Excuse me. The property is structured such that it will have a full-time property manager. We call them community leaders, and we'll have full-time maintenance staff. They generally run during business hours. The frail elders will have extra supports that they can access 24 hours a day. And in addition to that, we have 24/7 emergency maintenance service. And we're also having the operating budget security to drive the property. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I know. She said the frail services, but I think if I can go back that far in my mind, I thought that it was going to be someone there 24 hours a day on site.
Home leasing won't have staff there 24 hours. They'll be there during business hours, and then they'll be available as needed for maintenance. So, Latoya?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, we did have a few community meetings on this and community forums that were well attended. And the people in the community are excited about this project coming there. And we actually had a bunch of people that were disappointed that they couldn't move in right away because they thought it was something that was happening. So,
sorry about that.
So I know it was a long process, but I do want to say thank you for sticking it out and working with us and making sure that you guys were in the community beforehand. And we appreciate it, and we're excited about it coming to our neighborhood.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And one more quickie. I just got to keep going back in my memory.
Okay.
And I know we talked about maybe having, and then we'll look at the city on this one, a on-site police annex right in there?
Okay, we are not doing that. We have an office for Nessentia, and we're going to put the community room in the gym, if that makes. The gym sort of doubled as an auditorium and a gym when it operated as a school, but we don't have on-site police presence or a satellite.
And I just had one last, the language is kind of awkward, Mr. Clifford. So it's a 10%?
It's 10% of the difference between their gross rents minus their utilities. So if you take their gross rents, you subtract the utilities out, take 10% of that.
10% after the utilities.
That is the payment amount.
And what's the, or 27,000, whichever?
That's the floor.
That's,
So in other words, they will pay that much.
At least, yeah.
At least that much.
okay,
At least $500 a unit in taxes.
okay.
Our projections are that it's going to come in higher than that. We'll end up paying more than 500.
Okay. Got you. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll call that ready. 14, correct the tax rolls. Dave, any comment on that one, or?
Welcome back.
Any questions?
Yeah, why are we removing them? Did we, like, why are we removing the cleanup?
These are based on the codes office saying that these properties were charged incorrectly.
Okay.
For whatever reasons. Sometimes it's inadequate notification. Sometimes it's, not. It was done on another property.
Okay. Thanks, Dave.
Okay.
15, Margaret, did you want to just describe it quickly?
Good afternoon, councilors. Martha Maywell, First Deputy Commissioner of Finance. Item 15 is to purchase without competitive bidding title search services from two companies that we have been working with for many, many years. The reason we're coming before you to formalize this agreement is so that we can set up is to make the payment of their invoices much more efficient. If we set up an APO, we can just submit invoices against it. It's very much more efficient and quick processing versus treating each invoice as its own order, which is what we've been doing for the last many, many years, prior to my time in finance, certainly. These are both local companies. A few years ago, when one of them had a staffing shortage, we talked, we had a couple of meetings about maybe doing an RFP to see if there are other local title companies that we could or should be using and might get better service from. And we found we're getting a pretty good deal. This is based on pricing that was established. Like I said, I don't have the original dates. Many, many years ago, decades probably, that we've been using them. So it would be, at least financially, counterproductive to do an RFP. So
when was the last time we did an RFP for this contract?
I could not find one. When we looked at doing one last year, the county did one maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and their pricing is higher than what we are paying. We have one of the same vendors. They have one of the same vendors that we use, independent. So we thought we would let sleeping dogs lie and continue to use these guys.
And look, while I can understand and appreciate that, it just seems to me that over the last several agendas, we've waived the RFP process more than I think I've been on the council before. It just seems like every time it's, oh, well, it's more efficient. Well, are we really getting the best deal for the taxpayers in the city if we just waive the competitive bid every time? And this isn't specifically directed at you. I think you're just, unfortunately, up there at the microphone right now. It just seems like every time we're looking at a contract, we're waiving the entire RFP process. And I just, look, I understand that in certain situations, it's a company that's local, that we've been working with, and that has upgraded in some way that is going to make it more efficient, and I understand and appreciate that in this case it is, but I don't know. I don't know if my colleagues
Agree.
feel the
I
same way.
agree.
It just seems as though every time I turn around, we're waiving the process for competitive bid. So I just want to state that for the record, that I don't think that's best practice for the taxpayers in the city.
I agree.
Except this time it is,
Sorry.
respectfully.
Yeah. This time, look, I get it.
And I appreciate your
Yeah,
point, too.
I apologize that you had to be
No,
the one at
that's
the
okay.
microphone.
That's okay, I understand.
'Cause I was going to ask the same question.
Yeah, it just,
Any other questions?
thank you, Martha. Oh,
Thank you.
All righty. Councilor Green.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 16 is the item that would have the city no longer act as a broker for commercial trash removal. Are there questions on this item?
No, I think I've asked my questions.
Anyone? No? Okay. Item 17 would change the city code so that we would no longer pick up trash for residential properties between greater than 4 units. I don't support this, but I'm happy to have other counselors that might have questions on this during this time period.
But according to the spreadsheet, Corey, that you sent out, so we're picking up 374 properties that has 4 or more?
That's Corey Dunham, Chief Operating Officer. That's the universe of potential properties that are between more than 4 units, between 5 and 10 units. And I just wanted to share, I made a few copies. This is just an example, and this is one of our better case scenarios of a 7-unit property on James Street that had a set out yesterday.
Good job organizing.
I mean, it's very nicely containerized, but we really feel strongly this is not household waste. This is a revenue-generating property, and this is this person. We appreciate how neatly everything is arranged, but this is an income-generating property that we believe, revenue-generating that we believe should arrange for private haulers. I wanted to point out we do have Jay Fenner here, one of our crew leaders from sanitation. We have Steve Barnum from Local 400. We have Tom Ely and Robbie Grant from street cleaning. And I know this is not meant as an attack on landlords. This is not meant as a money grab. This idea really came from our workforce when Commissioner Robinson and Deputy Commissioner Fordock were having conversations with our sanitation crews to say, look, we can't deliver 10 to 12 new trucks for you. We can't automate and have an arm on our trucks tomorrow, but what is something that we can do to try to rein in some of the ideas for sanitation? And our sanitation crews are aware of what other municipalities do, and they know that Syracuse is an outlier in terms of the number of units that it picks up. And honestly, we wanted, and we've gone back and forth and had many of the conversations and discussed many of the concerns that many of you have. So they are certainly legitimate concerns that we've discussed as well. When we looked at municipalities of where to draw the line, 3 and 4 seem to be what other municipalities do, considering their best practice. There really is no justification to keep it at 10, other than that's what we've always done. So if you look at what other cities do, 3 or 4 units is where they draw the line. And we really feel that these are revenue-generating properties. Residents are subsidizing this service for these operations, and we think that they should be required to get a private hauler and no longer get the pickup service from DPW.
So I know one of the questions that has come up is that for a lot of these properties, it wouldn't be possible necessarily to put a dumpster in the back and, the restrictions. So I guess my question is here, in this scenario where a private hauler is picking up carts, wouldn't this picture look exactly the same except with the Syracuse Haulers logo on the trash cans?
Yeah, I mean, If the city stops picking up your property and then you now necessitate a dumpster for the amount of waste that your property is generating, I think that furthers the point of why is the city picking up that amount of waste? If we say we're no longer picking it up and now you need a dumpster, I think that furthers this point.
Just looks like my house if I miss a week.
Well, I'm sorry?
It looks like my house if I miss a week.
So, babies produce a lot of trash. So nobody says you have to get a dumpster. You can get carts, which is what these are. This would look exactly the same, except DPW drive by and Syracuse haulers would be the one to pick it up. I sent an email earlier this morning sharing a lot of the information from Ann Fordock. And I mentioned this to counselors earlier, speaking to a resident to say, how much is this going to save? And I said, our conservative estimate is $300,000. And he laughed and said, what is that, some sort of management calculator that you just put together and pulled out $300,000? And I said, no, that's tipping fees. That's how much it costs for us to dispose of trash, and that cost is going up due to factors outside of our control. It's really geopolitical. Nobody wants anybody's trash anymore. So the tipping fees are going up. We have estimated in the email that we sent earlier this morning how much we believe we would save based on tipping fees. That's not soft, harder to distinguish costs like workers' comp or depreciation of vehicles or the opportunity for our workers to do a host of all the other things that sanitation and DPW, the services that they perform every day.
I know that you're here, but I want to talk to the folks that actually
absolutely
do the trash.
Sure.
So can I have one of the workers? And I because I know you said you talked to the workers.
Yes.
And this is what they said would be better for them. So
it's one of the many suggestions that they provided of ways to improve.
I want to hear from one of the workers. Hi. So I want your perspective on all of this.
And the commercial stops, I really think that would help our guys, and the cost of what you guys are paying to dump out on Rock Cut Road. That's a lot of extra trash that we're picking up. That would help, the trucks alone, the guys alone. I think it'd make a big deal on comp rates and all that.
And it would make it more efficient. It would make it less.
Yes, I would think it'd be a lot more efficient by not having to pick all that up at 374 stops. So, that would make a big difference. On a day alone, just picking up the stuff. Yesterday, on Monday's routes, we threw 206 ton of trash alone in one day. So.
And that's all of these incorporated?
Everything, yes. 10 units, single families, duplexes. It's a lot of stops.
How many stops are there in a week?
On average, I don't have that number.
What is that? How many what?
How many stops are there a week?
What do you mean stops?
You just said there's 300. Well, we're getting rid of 374 houses, properties. That's
there's like
374 stops.
Parcels,
I know. So, how many stops?
How many times does the truck stop?
We're dropping 374 properties.
Mm-hmm.
He described them as stops, so whatever. How many properties stops do we make in a week, which is the full load?
I mean, we could calculate those that are 10 and over, which is not what we do. I mean, it would be somewhere around
374 out of 30,000, out of 20,000.
At about 39,000, 374. So it's about
we're gonna
1%.
decrease our comp rates because we're going to go from 39,000 to 38,626.
Mm-hmm. Well, but the amount of trash that each one of these units produces is more than a single or two-family property.
I know.
And obviously,
paying taxes.
Why would it be more for an apartment than for a single-family house?
this in one stop. I mean, would you like to?
Oh. But it's still
would
easier
you like
to
to
stop
do
here.
10 sit-ups a day, or would you like to do 70 right now? I mean, it's the more that you stop, the way that you're able to rest. I mean, this is, I mean, it really comes down to a philosophical debate that these are revenue-generating properties. They pay the same amount in taxes as everybody else does. We're subsidizing services for these properties that are generating revenue.
And we're also subsidizing services for people that live in mansions in Bradford Hills. So I don't understand why, why is it easier to to stop at 7 houses in Bradford Hills than it is to stop at this one property and pick up these 7 apartments.
Because this is a lot to pick up in the amount of time that you stop at a truck. I mean, and the amount of tipping fees, if we reduced these larger properties that are generating more garbage, we'd be picking up less tonnage per day.
Just a question first. There's a different process or maybe fees for commercial properties in general, correct?
I mean, we don't.
I'm saying a business down the street.
Right, we don't pick up for businesses.
Right, they probably privately contract. Just from my perspective, I think the effort to reduce the number of worker comp cases makes sense. I mean, obviously we want people to be healthy and I think also I can see the logic and improve efficiencies, especially with maybe the increased pace at which and it won't be obviously by any large margin, but obviously if you're hitting less spots, then you may have a little bit more efficiency in terms of timing and picking up trash. So I get that as well. I actually like the idea for one reason, and I mentioned it earlier. I argue the commercial nature of multi-dwelling units years ago. And I understand people, they only see residential, but they sell residential products like Burger King sell burgers. And if one commercial entity is charged or taxed or obligated to fine private haulers, I don't see why another one wouldn't be. Mm-hmm. And that's been my argument in general on the commercial nature of multi-dwelling units for years. So I could see the logic of this, and I certainly appreciate the position of the workers too. And I was expressed publicly my only concern relative to it was what it meant, and I was told that it didn't mean anything in terms of impacting the workforce, as long as it doesn't reduce the workforce or anything like that.
There is no shortage of work to be done at Public Works. And I mean, for what it's worth, why 4 units? This is what other municipalities similar to our size have done. This is what New York State determines. They don't determine that mansions in Bradford Hills are commercial property. So this is where we've, and we had many of these discussions. But again, the only reason to keep it at 10 is just because that's what we decided decades ago to do. And so we'd like to fall more in line with what other municipalities do, what New York State determines a commercial property, and have these revenue-generating properties contract for private trash hauling.
Could I? So you mentioned other municipalities. So the big, like the big 5, were they always at 4? Are we an anomaly in the sense that we decided 10 and Buffalo and Ithaca decided when they made their code that they would do 4?
It seems that the change was made in the early to mid 90s in Buffalo, Albany, Rochester. From the conversations that we've had with their staff. That's why it was...
Previous to that, were they similar? Like, were they 10?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because at some point, there was a time when DPW picked up everybody's trash throughout the entire city, commercial, residential, everybody. And in the 90s is when municipalities overall said, you know what, we're not going to pick up commercial waste anymore, which I think is in part why we have item 16, that, we tried to have a bridge to get people... once we stop picking up commercial. So it's difficult to determine from those municipalities what the response was, because it happened, not that the 90s were that long ago, but it's long ago enough that nobody recalls any particular pushback or any specifics.
I also had a property owner present an argument that the assessments would go down on those properties. So the savings of ballpark $300,000. His argument was that now that there's a commercial service attached with buying the property, that the assessment would potentially be reduced, and it would come out in the wash as an even, because the assessment on these 400 properties would be reduced. So I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts on that or pushback on that.
I think for 1 to 4 units, there's a lower margin of return, and so it might be a greater hardship, and and that's in part why I think the line has been drawn at 4, but this approach provides ample margins. We believe, in speaking with Stephanie and MBD and a lot of the staff there who work in affordable housing, who work with landlords to see does 4 units feel like the right place to draw the line, that there are ample margins to properly care for the property. It's not an enormous cost to provide private trash hauling. And, speaking with Stephanie's staff, there also is the thought that perhaps once it's being paid for, that people might be a bit more responsible in what they put out, given that you're paying for the service.
So I guess just following up on Councilor Driscoll's question, basically if this added fee comes in, there's 3 options the landlord would have. 1 would pass it on to the tenant. 2 would be reduce costs somewhere else and other investments in the property. Or 3, just eat into your net operating income. And is your kind of prediction that that's what will happen, that every landlord will just make less money?
Yeah, I don't believe that. If you're a Section 8 tenant, you can't pass the costs on to that tenant. There's a cap to what they're able to pay. And the majority of these properties are not receiving assistance from comparing information with the MBD they're not receiving assistance. So I don't believe we're dealing with a lot of affordable housing. Whether or not that cuts into a small portion of the landlord's profit, I think it becomes part of doing business. And like I said, I really believe that this is a small percentage of what these property owners are collecting in revenue.
Okay.
I don't want to be the guy with the calculator, but okay, so 374 fewer stops a week. So if there's 5 days of pickup a week, that's 74 fewer stops. There are these kind of stops, so you're getting this much. So if I've seen these dudes pick up pretty quick, so let's be generous and say it takes them 3 minutes to pick this up once they're driving past. So 3 minutes times 74 stops is 222 minutes. This is across the entire city, across the entire 90 guys who are going out to pick up trash. So it's like 3.7 hours per day that we're spending less time. And because it's spread across the city and across 25 trucks and all this other stuff, you're saying we're not going to get any savings. I think that when you do the math, you can kind of, you're not getting any staff savings, are you? No staff savings.
It's harder to pin. I'm not saying we're not having staff savings. I'm saying it's harder.
You're just getting tipping fee savings. That's all you're budgeting.
I'm not. No, that's what I can put a definite figure to. I'm sure there will be savings in staff. I'm sure there will be savings in workers' compensation and vehicle depreciation and all of those, and the opportunity for sanitation to do more. I can't put a hard number on that, and so that's not what we've put forward. What we've put forth are the tipping fees, which we can put a hard figure to.
I just think given the nature of just what I went through, it'll be hard for you to realize that 3.7 hours a day because it's spread across 95 guys. So, and in terms of efficiency, we keep saying it's making it more efficient, but the most efficient thing would be to have one truck drive and stop at every house. Like, it's inherently, as a system, less efficient to say, okay, now we're gonna have multiple trucks.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
Okay, last point. You said there's no justification for 10, but you've provided no justification to make it 4, other than to say there's no
Every other
justification.
municipality does it. New York State considers that a commercial property, a commercial enterprise.
Jumping off a bridge, would we do it?
Well, having come before you with other policy proposals, the question is always, what do other cities do? And so we've looked at what other cities do, and other cities
jump in
do
this a little bit because people, I think that right now, change is hard for a lot of people, okay? And I'm not sitting here saying do it or don't do it. I don't have a vote. But my thing is this. If you have a 10-unit apartment building, you're a business. You're not a mom and pop shop. You're not just, Helen's renting to her son. So at what point do we draw the line? And
I understand, but my issue is, and I feel like probably the issue of other counselors, is these folks are paying taxes. That's part of what the services that they get. And my concern then becomes, are we going to have more people that want to get out of the business that might be a decent landlord that has 6 or 7 units? Like, this is a perfect example. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is on James Street. Yeah, this is down the road for me. They do a good job of maintaining.
That is the absolute best case scenario.
I understand that you presented us with one that looks okay. But
looks okay. It looks great. That's cleaner than what I put out this morning.
And I understand. But my point is, okay, so this person who probably is a good landlord, when it comes down to it,
and we're taking things away, it becomes a question of what are we going to take away next that they're already paying taxes for? What is the next service that we
and
cut?
Counselor, I hear
They're going to
you,
sell to somebody
But
that's downstate,
Counselor Bay had brought this up long before you came on the council, because in the university area, we get bombarded with this constantly. So where do we make that distinction?
I think it's a fair argument to question about, all right, well, they're already paying for services, so how do you cut a service? I get that argument. It's why I talked about the fact that businesses are obligated to get their own service anyway. And so I think the real argument, maybe to the point, is qualifying, and I think this is the point presented by you, Corey, that, using best practices. Other areas qualify these as commercial enterprises, and to me that seems to be maybe the best argument, alongside, obviously, to me it doesn't matter, and I think it applies to you too, Counselor. It doesn't matter if it's 4 people or 1 person that get injured. You don't want anybody to get injured, right? So any preservation or protections in that respect has value. I happen to enjoy the debate, let me put that out there, but I think, I don't want to be redundant, but I think it's a fair position to take to say, this is similar. That's why I say I think that, Counselor, is where the real argument is. Can a 4 or more unit residential unit be qualified as commercial enterprise? In other areas it is, maybe in some areas it isn't. Businesses pay taxes. They can make the same argument. We pay taxes. Why don't you pick up our trash? Why are we obligated to go out and find the service? But we do it, And so while I get the point, though, it's the clawback is tough to sell. Like, oh, I've been paying you all this time, and you've been collecting my trash. All of a sudden now you want to cut back, whereas there's some kind of reduction for me. So I can kind of get that argument, but I just kind of wanted to make a point that I think the real argument is in qualifying whether 4 or more units constitute a commercial enterprise, similar to Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Right.
Burger.
I have a question. When a property has got commercial pickup, do we regulate how often that's picked up? Do we have any say or anything over that?
No, I don't believe so. I don't think so. Do we tell them? No, we don't tell them when they need to get picked up. And if there is a policy decision we can make on services that don't have any consequences, I'm open to that, but it's balancing that this idea came from our workforce, which I think is important. What other municipalities do certainly shouldn't dictate what we do, but I think is a good indicator of best practices in other municipalities. And, these, as President Hudson said, 10 units is not regular household trash. And that's really what we should be focusing on, and letting these revenue-generating properties pay for the service as we do other commercial enterprises.
Because, not to even change the subject, how much money are we spending picking up TVs that people keep dropping outside?
Which is another issue we need to get to. We need to get to TVs, we need to get to illegal set-outs. There's no shortage of issues at DPW, but, our workforce knows what other municipalities are doing and brought it to leadership.
How much are we paying to get rid of TVs that Helen, the homeowner, set on the side of the road? How much are we paying?
Yeah, we pick up thousands of TVs, and each one is...
It's, I believe, 20 cents a pound, but the big part is $500 per pickup. So there's a pound rate and a pickup charge.
Yeah.
I just in fairness, like I said, I'm in favor of the idea, but in fairness, again, I'm thinking about Councilor Carney's point. Obviously, it's unfair to use New York City as an example, right? It makes more sense to use like a Minneapolis or a city that's more to our size as an example. We can't even necessarily use Buffalo as an example, and maybe, it makes set a better standard to say, oh, well, cities our size are operating in this respect, and so it makes more sense here. Because, what he said is true, because other cities jump off a cliff or a bridge.
No, and it's, there are things that other cities do that we look at and decide it's not the best fit for Syracuse, but this is one that, and, there's a reason why we didn't bring this the first week that the administration was in office. There was a lot of debate, a lot of back and forth, a lot of talking to the workforce, a lot of talking to other municipalities, having a lot of the conversations and raising the questions that you are raising now, that people pay taxes, isn't this a service that's included in the taxes? And we believe that this is really essentially subsidizing revenue-generating properties, that residents are subsidizing the service for these properties.
Okay, thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Item 18.
Reallocation.
Good afternoon, councilors. Lori Ayako, DPW, first fiscal officer. 18, we had a few capital accounts that we had set aside a few years ago to replace all the elevators in City Hall. We finally have a contract, and the money that we need to replace both elevators is less than what we had set aside. So using one of these accounts to buy a new payloader, we just want to reallocate the money for that.
So when's the work on the elevator scheduled for?
I don't exactly know, but I know it's in there.
Work for the elevators.
I know.
Scheduled for.
And what's being reallocated towards, you say?
Pardon me?
What is it being reallocated?
A payloader for street
payloader?
cleaning.
Just quickly, I've been working with Kelly Haggerty, meeting with a design firm to get the elevators for City Hall redesigned, repaired, more permanently up and running. So that project is moving forward. So if Kelly returns, then she can give you a more detailed update, but we've been working on that also.
Do you have any idea how much that's going to cost?
Not off the top of my head, but I can get it to you as soon as Kelly walks back in.
Corey, I think you should stay close.
Just have a seat.
But what you're telling us is that these will be corrected, and there will be no impact.
Right,
from
we
this
are not,
money
we're
being
not
moved.
sacrificing the work on City Hall elevators because of this. We have money set aside for City Hall elevators. Kelly's working on the design with the firm to get that taken care of. This is just additional money that we want to reallocate for a payloader.
Great.
Thank you. Item 19.
Everybody up and down.
All righty.
Who's, Corey, are you item 19?
You want to know?
Sure. Ann Fordock, DPW. So we are just applying for grants for 3 Packers. So the capital budget that you approved the end of last year was, we put in for 3 trash Packers, and now is the time that we've ordered them. We're waiting for them to come in, but we started the grant process rolling. And part of the grant is it has to come through you guys as well, just to let you know, kind of get permission to apply for the New York State DEC grant. It's up to 50% reimbursement if the trucks are used for recycling, which is the plan.
So I know, go ahead.
So if that happens and we get half of our money back, so we're gonna do what with the money we allocated?
So the money goes back to the general fund, as far as I know, right, when we get grants for things, Mary? So with this DEC grant, it could take up to 3 years for the money to come in. Because there's such a huge long waiting list. It's for anything in New York State recycling or composting related. So we would have, bonded for them, gotten them, all of that, and then the money would come in after the fact. So,
Because
debt services?
Because I don't want to see what's happening with the 2015 up at the payloader, that the money was sitting there since 2015. I don't want to see that happen again when it comes to this and other projects like this.
When they buy the Packers, they use bonded funds, so when we get any reimbursement back, that has to go into our debt service fund to pay off the bonds.
Okay.
So I know as part of our larger conversation about the future of trash removal in the city, we've talked about technology upgrades and automatic. So how does this fit into this?
Actually, I ordered these with rear tippers on them so that we could move towards automation. Okay. So it's setting the stage for a progressive future.
Wait, does automation call for reduction of jobs?
It shouldn't, because we still have a lot of work to do.
Shouldn't be.
Because there's...
No.
Yeah, that's a better answer.
Right, because shouldn't be, that's not working for me, okay?
And far as the grant money, I wish that can come back to us, but obviously it doesn't.
we can buy more Packers if we got the money back. So
Okay, but
I
with
need
the
you guys to get on that.
But with the automation, you're telling me there will be no job losses?
No.
There's plenty for them to do in that, we have tires to pick up. We have, a lot that, sorry.
No.
So
there will be no job loss.
So with automation, because I've had this question and I've had conversations in the past with previous DPW commissioners about, what exactly are we talking about? Like, I'm trying to think.
Arm
Other
drops down, swings out, grabs
picks
the
it,
can.
dumps it. Yeah. So I guess is that.
So,
I'm confused.
yeah, we've committed to presenting both to the council and the public a plan on where we plan to go with sanitation by the end of the year. So is that going to mean arms? Is that going to mean tippers? Is it, are we purchasing the carts? Are we, all of that? Are we going to change the frequency at which we pick up? All of those things are things that we're working through right now, and so we've committed to having a plan in place by the end of the year, at least a path forward.
Okay, because every time we talk about automated trash pickup in the arms, I had the conversation with previous DPW commissioners, and the issue is that on most city streets, it's narrow, cars are double parked, you're not going to be able to get to it, and then what are we going to simply do, just not pick up the trash?
Right, yeah, and we are certainly not the first one to do this, and so we're talking to a lot of industry experts on how to navigate some of those issues. So we'll have a plan by the end of the year.
Because it works in the suburbs, because nobody parks on the street.
Right.
But we've seen this in similar demographics. Auburn, you go, in Massachusetts, they do it in different, same demographics that we have, narrow streets. So.
I just have to address a couple questions that came. Sharon Owens, Deputy Mayor. I would never want to be Deputy Commissioner in this city. Excuse my attire, I'm handing out hot dogs in an hour. Not taking away from our fire department, our police department, all of the departments in our city. These sanitation folks bust their tails. I've never picked up trash. So I don't know how long it takes and how quick they are. I know they're efficient, I know they work hard. So I don't know how long it takes them to pick up trash. But I know that it is back-breaking work. And when they come to us and say, you asked us an idea, which I think they appreciated, and we got their feedback, I think that we should listen to the people who pick it up, who go out there, God knows what are in those trash cans, that they pick up. It is back-breaking, compensation cases through the roof through this department. I just want us as people who do not pick up trash to hear the people who do. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna address this, okay? Because I understand. I don't think anyone, and I don't believe, and I especially am not saying that they are not hard workers, that they're not doing the most efficient work that they can. My issue and my concern about what we're doing is we're telling people, here's what you've paid in taxes, and now we're going to cut some of the services, and that we're going to lose. And we're going to lose some landlords that are decent landlords, and we're going to get more of the individuals that, to be quite honest, don't care and probably let the garbage pile up in their backyard.
Councilor Carney, I agree with your point. Councilor Bay backed up your point. We should be looking at municipalities that are like Syracuse. We probably shouldn't be comparing ourselves to Buffalo. I agree with your point. But when I hear people work quick, they get it done in so many seconds, I don't know how fast they get that done, because I don't do it. Should we jump off a bridge because certain municipalities do? I don't think that kind of conversation is necessary. We're trying to be efficient for our workforce who came up with the idea. And so that is just the point that I'm making.
Well, I don't think that we should just be doing something because other municipalities do it.
I would agree.
That's my point that I'm making.
To the point that Councilor Bay made, we should look at municipalities our size.
Okay.
Item 20.
Moving right along.
Lori Iacco, DPW Fiscal Officer.
About 3 minutes an item.
Item 20 is for our sewer capital equipment fund. We are getting new camera equipment, a truck to put it on, installation, and a van.
Questions?
So the camera equipment, is that the equipment that we're going to be able to put it down in,
Yes.
in the sewer and be able to see pictures
Yes.
and all that good stuff? Didn't we have some of that already?
We do, but it's pretty old, and you always need a backup, so if that is being fixed, and they're very expensive to fix, we have to ship them out, and they could be out for 2 or 3 months before they ship them back.
Lori?
Pardon me?
How many do we have?
One.
Just one. So this would be,
This would give us our second.
This second one would be more updated and be able to see a little bit more things down there than the one that we currently have.
so they don't do like your phone will automatically say update, so these cameras don't just update?
No, we got to have certain softwares in that, so it's not like Sprint or T-Mobile or whoever, and you hit a button. So.
21?
Yeah, DPW.
Neil Burke, DPW. 21 through 23 is just a bookkeeping item to make sure we have the right numbers. With the documents that we're returning to New York State DOT, the costs to the city do not change, the match does not change. This is for a Transportation Alternatives Program grant for Lodi Street, and what this is just correcting the amount listed for the primary scoping and design phase.
Questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 24.
Lori Iacco, DPW. This is just amending the IMA we have with Onondaga County for green infrastructure work. We're adding 2 more streets to this agreement that we had with them last year, and this goes way back. We just keep amending it to add new streets.
And it's a federal project. Is there any, Marcia Shelley?
No, this isn't a federal project. This is just Onondaga County agreeing to do some green infrastructure work for us.
With 80% reimbursement from the federal government. Oh, I'm on the wrong number. Go ahead. 24, okay.
Okay, thank you.
This is mostly the Save the Rain type stuff?
Yes.
Or?
So you can't tear down buildings and put green spaces in?
I don't think so.
How are the locations selected?
I think there's,
No green spaces.
he wants to know how they're selected.
Owen Kearney with City Planning, also involved in coordinating this work with the county. It's part of, they do modeling of the city sewer shed, or I guess in this sense, the county sewer shed, and basically look for areas where they can improve the efficiency, the stormwater, the implications of stormwater runoff. So it's based on data that they have, based on discussions with the city, coordinating projects. But, I mean, their project selections are largely based on their modeling data. Mm-hmm. I can't speak in detail about that, but this is probably a decade-old program, the Save the Rain program. I don't know the...
You're not mic'd up.
I can get more information on that, if Counselor, about what exactly the model is, but I think suffice it to say it's based on data that they have on areas of the city, sewer sheds, stormwater runoff, how to improve these conditions and do projects in those areas where there needs improvement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 25. Oh, that was 25. Sorry, 26.
Hi, Mary Robinson, City Engineer. This is requesting permission to enter into the Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board Central New York Stormwater Coalition. We've been doing it. This is our 12th year. This helps us meet our MS4 stormwater requirements for DEC and US EPA. The cost has been the same, not to exceed $3,600 for quite a few years now. It really helps us with our training, our public participation, and some other requirements, and also as working as a coalition with all the other communities. We have a larger voice than just being one community.
Questions?
Thank you.
That's all I got, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilor Carney.
Thank you, Madam President. I have items 27 through 31. Anybody from Parks?
Yeah.
All right.
Good afternoon, Jimmy Oliver, Deputy Commissioner of Parks and Recreation and Youth Programs. We would like to enter an agreement with the food bank to provide healthy and nutritious meals for our community centers. All right, item 28, appropriate funds from our cash capital in the amount not to exceed $110,000 for landscape restoration project.
Is there a breakdown of what they're spending in each park or no?
Steve Harris is here to explain that.
Hello, Steve Harris, City Arborist Parks Department. I cannot give you a breakdown because we haven't, each project is different and we haven't started doing the work. We do have a quote for work. We have an estimate right now for work we want to do at Kirk Park West. If you can picture the South Ave Bridge, where it is at Kirk Park, and you think of that slope that runs from the bridge to the Onondaga Creek Boulevard. That slope is overrun by invasive species, including poison ivy and various other weeds we can't manage and we can't at present mow. So a little bit over 1 acre area that includes that all the way to the building is somewhere, it's going to be somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000. That's to remove what's there and to convert it to grass so it can be mowed.
And I guess that was sort of my question is, we got a couple parks listed there and there's 110 grand. So
Right. I will go as far as we can. Another project is at Elmwood. We have medians and landscape areas that we can't manage the vegetation because it's overrun with poison ivy, so we can't send volunteers in there. I can't get anybody that wants to work in those places unless I'm paying a contractor. And we also can't see the playgrounds there. So they used to be able to have views from the roads that go back, and so you can see what's going on there and monitor that area. So we need to convert and manage that landscape. And I won't know what the cost is, but I'm projecting we'll be able to do somewhere between 2 to 4 projects with this. And we're prioritizing ones that people keep coming back to us every year to deal with.
What was the scope it passes? Scope of work you're looking to do?
Say that again?
At the Arboretum.
At the Arboretum, there the restoration would be bringing back the Arboretum, dealing with planting more trees there, but our issue there is that back fence line. We can no longer, we got dead trees there, we can't mow that area. It's again overrun with woody vegetation, poison ivy, issues that just make it complicated to do what we want to do. Any other questions?
So this isn't for work that's already been done. This is for projects that are going to be done.
These is for projects that are going to be done.
And it said that we're using cash capital that was previously allocated for like the Schiller ballpark is what it said in the item A. Are we using these funds now because the work has already been done at the ball fields? And which specific ones are we talking about? Which specific, like, are we talking about the actual baseball field? Are we talking about the softball fields over there? Or whatever it is?
I would have to get back to you on that. I do not have that answer.
Okay.
but I will get back.
I know we did. Was it Sunnycrest or? Sorry, I apologize. I know it was a park in my district that I wasn't sure if the work was done or not. It said we're just reallocating the funds.
As I mentioned, I will get that answer back to you.
I know it was a ball field at either Sunnycrest or Schiller, and I just want to make sure that the work was done and we're not just taking, work that was previously promised and funds allocated to it. So
Duly noted.
all right, thank you.
All right. Item 29, to appropriate funds from 2019-2020 cash capital in the amount not to exceed $99,000 for capital improvements in program and equipment detailed in Schedule A.
So their vehicles, are you replacing the vehicles?
Yes, I have Bid Rose here to answer that question. Yes. Item 30, bond ordinance authorizing the insurance and sale of bonds of the city of Syracuse to defray the cost for parks equipment to purchase a Packer replacement not to exceed $136,000.
So I guess my question is, why do we have separate Packers for DPW and parks?
That's a good question, but I'll have Ben DeRose answer that.
Why do we have separate equipment Packers for DPW and parks?
We run out of Packer every day, so they have their scheduled stops, and then we also have ours. We run a Packer through every park that drives through, do all the green garbage cans. So that's a full day's work for two guys on a truck.
But would it make sense in the future to look at having DPW do that work?
There's a lot of times now where DPW is actually borrowing trucks from us to cover their routes because of so much equipment constantly breaking down. So we've went out. They actually have one of our two Packers right now. Both of our Packers have outlived their life. So they're I mean, I got $60-something thousand worth of repairs on this Packer documented. And the next one's like 135 and it's a larger Packer, so it'll hold more garbage.
Just to speak about that collaboration with DPW, at a later date, we can have conversations with the commissioner and deputy commissioner of DPW to kind of figure out how we can balance that and work together to be more effective and efficient, if that answers your question.
Okay. What's that?
Maintenance.
Can I add something?
Yes, sure.
We get those 10 units off, we definitely can do the parks and stuff. I'm just saying.
There's been a lot of talk about efficiency, and it just seems like DPW could be doing some of that. This would be very efficient if DPW was picking up trash in the middle of our city.
Like you said, we run on a different schedule than they do. But if we minimize some of the stuff that we are doing, like those 10 units, we can probably take care of the parks as well.
Historically, these Packers are smaller to get into other areas. They're not the size of the DPW.
Yeah, we're talking a 13-yard Packer for the parks. And you got two guys working full-time on that. It's not, I mean, if you pulled these guys off, they would be coming away from full-time work to be doing full-time work there. It's not like they'd be able to do both within one shift. I mean, you need both Packers to be able to get the work done efficiently.
But at some point, I'm going to ask Councilor Green to call a committee meeting, because since I've started, I still can't figure out why we can't consolidate everything that we do.
Sure.
We're talking about all of the different departments and the facilities, because we cross over anyway. Because I'm almost sure I can come to your department and I can find a police car in there being sprayed and painted. So if we're going to cross over, let's really cross over.
Sure.
So we need to have a committee meeting and talk about
Yeah,
it.
any way we can combine services within departments, I think is great when it makes sense and it's feasible, for sure.
And for what it's worth, I think once we have the fleet manager in place, they should be able to do more of that cross-departmental coordination. Just as an update there, we closed out the job posting. We have about 50 or so resumes, so we're just going through them now with personnel, and we should be starting interviews shortly.
And finally, to authorize the 2019-2020 capital improvement program for parks equipment to purchase a Packer replacement on behalf of the parks, not to exceed $136,000.
Yeah, okay.
Awesome.
Those are my items.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen.
Thank you. Have items 32 through 39. Tori isn't here today. You can talk about it? Okay.
I'm sure they have some ideas.
Hi, Janet Burke, the Director of Research. There is an application is going into New York Community Trust Foundation to give some money to help get out the census count for 2020.
Where are the hard to count areas?
Well, there's a lot of hard to count areas, but a lot of them are the refugees that are afraid to be counted. There's a lot of the homeless people. There's a lot of people that are afraid to be counted and are very vulnerable.
The most hard to count area is Census Tract 39 on the near west side.
I was thinking that. So we're going to like the New Americans and the Spanish Coalition, or
Right. Oh yeah. Right. All of those. This grant is just to give money to implement projects and ideas. That there's a whole census group. That's high-level people that are figuring out the best way to do the census. This is money to give them the money to be able to carry out some of the things. Okay.
Is this going to be the first of many grants, do you think? Because they're going to need more than just this, right?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and we also have received some money from the Community Foundation, and there's other things in the pipeline.
Okay.
Your question, and maybe you know it offhand, for each person counted in the census, how much money comes back to our city?
No, Counselor, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, but I could find that out.
Oh, no need. $1,900 per person per census tract every year, and then the count year is $10,000 per person per census tract.
Okay.
Okay, and since you can answer that, then answer this for me. When they're counted, if we have 15,000 people in prison in Marcy, right? They're counted in Marcy, but they're released back to Syracuse. Their money stays in Marcy. How do we get our money back?
It's not that it's released back to Syracuse while they are incarcerated.
Released back.
No, I understand that. While they are incarcerated, the census count and collection is based on where they are. When they come back, it comes back here. But that is more politics than it is government. Hate to say it.
So should we build a prison here in Syracuse?
No, we should just get our money back.
Get the people out of prison. Okay, thank you. All right, item 33.
Good afternoon, Stephanie Pasquale, Commissioner for Neighborhood and Business Development. Thank you. This item represents year 2 of a 2-year allocation, and we are trying to execute that second year of contracts with those entities as identified in your memo in the attachment. I'm happy to take any questions.
So for the next round, we're going to start in, is it September or October of this year?
I think it's usually around January. We'll send applications out and get the UNSAC committee back together to decide for that final year of the 5-year commitment from the university for the year that'll start July 1st, 2020.
And then it will just be 1 year left.
Correct, right. So this represents year 4 of the 5 years.
Okay. And then it's hopes that we'll redo it for another 5 years?
Yeah, I haven't spoken to the administration, but I assume there'll be conversations will start soon to be thinking about the next phase and what that looks like.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, 34, I'm going to hold this and have a committee meeting. So once I get the date for the committee meeting, I'll be sure to send that out.
Yep.
I said that's smart.
Good move.
Okay, all right, and we have Heather for 35, 36, and 37.
Good afternoon, councilors. Heather Lamandola, zoning administrator. Item 35 is a special permit on Valley Drive for light-duty motor vehicle repair.
So what was the problem with this, Heather?
What was the problem? I don't think there was a problem. They waived signage.
And is there a problem with the, no problem?
No problem.
Okay.
That I know of.
Okay.
That anyone has told me.
This is not the old man, right?
No, okay.
No, it's a different one.
No, all set, go ahead, Heather.
Okay, this, item 36 is a special permit for a transitional parking area on West Genesee Street. This is a property next to the Brooklyn Pickle.
What does transitional parking mean?
The intent of transitional parking area is to provide a parking lot for more than one use of the neighborhood, so people can park there and then walk to the specific uses.
Who owns it?
It is Ken
Kenny.
Sniper.
He's providing that service? for
Oh,
the
no.
neighborhood? That's great.
Well, this is specific to
He was asking, was there anything
the Brooklyn
wrong?
Pickle.
What is transitional parking?
He's buying the property.
That's the process in the special permit that they used, yes.
You can go back.
Are those allowed anywhere? You could use those like all over Tico.
No, only in certain zoning districts.
We add that to the zoning code.
Can we revisit item 35 for Council Rudd, please?
I apologize if you said this, but I was just looking at 35 and 36 on Google Earth previously, and the Valley Drive one, what exactly happened? So like somebody paved over the space between the road and what's happening? I don't understand this one.
They want to establish a light-duty motor vehicle repair shop on Valley Drive, and there is asphalt in between.
So all we're doing is saying you can have a car shop here. That's
Yes,
all.
you're looking at the specific land use.
Okay, and then 36, when you look up this one, it's right next to the Brooklyn Pickle, and it, in my opinion, has what is illegal paving in front of it already. Like it's a house, and they basically paved over the front yard. Is that the transitional parking that we're authorizing, or will there be something that looks...
No, so if you look in your packet, you'll see the plan that was actually approved by the Planning Commission. There is some landscaping.
The packet that we got last night, just to be fair. But yeah, I'll look in my packet, page 30. Sorry. I don't mean you, but you don't need to say the packet that you have like that.
I can take it.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Where, because I had played this game before. Genesee Street. So can you just, this 2-inch thing that I get to look at,
I think it's a great project.
Yes.
I'm in support of it. Thank you, Heather.
There's about 9.5 feet of landscaping from the property line inward, and then there is a buffer in between the actual Brooklyn Pickle and this, because there is a topography change. So there will be however many parking spaces there are there. But the existing structure will be demolished in order to have the parking lot.
yeah, fine. I mean, this is why, I don't know. This is the kind of stuff we get. We're so happy to have extra parking. Pave the whole thing. It's
I just want to ask
the whole thing.
Sorry, I'm sorry. So the map that's in our book has a picture of the existing blacktop, which to me looks pretty close to the road, existing road. So is that going to be the only part that's not blacktopped in the final plan, or it will literally all be blacktop?
There is, if you look at that, there is about 9.5 feet of landscaping devoid of the actual curb cut. And if you like, I can maybe email you the plan so you can blow it up and look at it in more detail.
Yeah, I just need some kind of explanation. Like, that's hard to see. And then we got this. If you could just walk me through it more so I understand what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I don't know what
because it looks, what's there right now looks like it shouldn't be there. And it looks bad.
Yeah. I think that you're looking at a different case.
This is the one right here.
That's the one. Okay, we.
Yeah, can you send them over an email, please?
I don't care if you're a business in a house, but it's a structure that paved over its front yard. And I'm just trying to understand what it's going to look like, and I can't really tell from.
I can give you
So you
a
can just explain it to me offline. That's fine. Thank you.
bigger picture, yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, 37?
Hold on a second. Item 37, this is a special permit for a gasoline service station and a restaurant within a convenience store on Brighton and Thurber.
So this one, they had the entrance, according to the study, the entrance should have been on Thurber. But I guess when they went through, they put it on Brighton, but that's not
Yep, so the proposal was to have 3 curb cuts, 2 on East Brighton and 1 on Thurber. There was some neighborhood opposition. The Planning Commission made a decision to approve it without the driveway on Thurber. And so that's what's before you now. And again, those are recommendations by the Planning Commission.
Right, so we need to send this back because we want we need the entrance on on Thurber, because that's what the study said was best as far as safety. So I know they reached out to you as well.
My understanding, and Heather, I hope you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is that the initial traffic comments in the system indicated that there was a safety concern for an entrance and egress left-hand on Thurber, and based on that comment, the Planning Commission voted the way that they did, but subsequent to the vote, the traffic study notes by Jim French were changed in the system to indicate that there were no safety concerns with an entrance or exit on Thurber. Is that essentially correct?
And I got that information after the decision was made. So there have been times where this body has remanded special permits back to the commission to look at a specific issue. I will defer to your attorney, but that is an option for this board.
The process to do that is to direct the city clerk to send this back, because you can only vote for up or down. You can't hold it. I mean, you can send it back, remand it for reconsideration for the purposes you just described, and I would send it back.
Yeah,
Because, go ahead.
So the process for that would be at the voting meeting, when you call the roll.
No, not necessarily. Can we do it at the study session, or does it have to wait till Monday? You're just directing me to send it back as a communication.
Joe Barry from the Law Department. As was mentioned, this is a practice that we've engaged in the past, where items are remanded to the Planning Commission. Procedurally, it has to take place on Monday because that's the voting meeting. Past practice has been to do it by consensus because typically everyone on the council is in agreement. But if there's some disagreement, then the best practice would be for someone to make a motion, have it seconded to direct the city clerk to send it back appropriately. So do it either way.
Right, but if there's a consensus today, we can move forward on Monday, right?
Correct.
Anybody have a problem with going back to?
No, but I want to ask Heather a question, because it's kind of to me like the same thing as the burned dairy, because some things just aren't logical. With the 37. Because when you look at it, when you're talking about that traffic flow on Brighton, I don't know how many of those folks on the Planning Commission actually drive that area on a regular basis. To just put the parking on Brighton, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Thurber is a slower road that you won't have all of that traffic, so I'm still trying to understand how that happened.
Right. And that's what the traffic study suggested, but they still voted the opposite way.
They should take another look at it.
So we're going to send it back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone object to sending it, to remanding it, or can we do that by consensus?
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, with a consensus, then I'll send it back.
Yep,
Great, thank you.
Are there no?
Just a reminder to the council that in the proposed rezone, these 3 items would be exactly what would come before the council and not go to the Planning Commission.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right,
If
thanks.
we'd have people that would.
All right, we only have 2 items, 38 and 39.
They're all yours.
Yep. And did you have the sheet? Oh, okay.
They're all yours.
You can have the whole file.
Okay. I'll hold them for a second. I'll reach out to both of them over the weekend, and then I'll let you know on Monday.
Great, thanks. All righty. And before we adjourn, Owen, while you're still here, can I ask you to send me, I would like to know where all of our brownfields are, because we're adding on more and more brownfields, and we're making it's more in depth. So I would like to see where they are.
Sure, we can provide councilors a list of what we have, and as I think your point is well taken, that part of that is a discovery period, that, you know, former uses and things like that. The city doesn't keep a comprehensive record of all private property conditions, but we surely know as things have come up over the last few decades, we have a record of that, and we can absolutely provide that.
Drive is turning into a straight brownfield.
Are they broken down at all, like would gas stations and like Stratton or Paint be in the same classification?
There's limit. Some of them have that level of detail. Some of them we just have taken from state programs that listed as in the brownfield program. We don't necessarily have a whole lot of details on. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but happy to provide what we have.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Adjourn.
Aye.
Bryn.